Hello Year 9s. Last lesson you should have looked at the ways to manage the tropical rainforest. So we've actually finished looking at tropical rainforest now. We're going to study hot deserts, which is still a part of the living world topic, but we're going to move on to hot deserts. So we've done ecosystems and we've done tropical rainforest. We're now going to go on to hot deserts. So quite exciting. So the title is obviously hot deserts. You have a worksheet to work throughout this lesson, and you need to hand that back to your individual geography teacher once you've finished it. So firstly, we're going to have a go at a quick starter task. Choose 5 adjectives to describe hot desert ecosystems. Now pause the video to give yourself a bit of time just to come up with some 5 ways to describe a hot desert ecosystem. Okay, so you've had some time now to have a go at that. So here's just some that I've thought of. So ways to describe the desert would be hot, dry, sandy, arid, and a really good word is inhospitable. Okay, now it's very important that you know that this is a hot desert, not a cold desert. Okay, this is a hot desert that we're going to look at. So first thing we'd like to do then, just as a little bit of a nice task to get us started, is to describe the location of the world's hot deserts. Now, if you want to have a go at trying to get some of these words in to your answer would be fantastic. So if you want to have a go at League 1, try and get equator, Africa, continents, north and south and spread in there. Or if you want to go up to the championship, try and get Tropic of Cancer, Tropic of Capricorn, equatorial zone, Sahara Desert distribution. And finally Premier League, latitude, northern hemisphere, southern hemisphere, 20 degrees and 35 degrees. And then zone of sinking air, high pressure. So quite some difficult words to get in there. So if you are an okay geographer, try and use at least one championship word. Okay. If you are a good geographer, try and use at least one Premier League word. And finally, if you are top geographer, try and use at least 3 Premier League words. So give yourself a bit of time now and pause the video to have a go at describing the location of the world's hot deserts. Okay, so you've had some time now to have a go at describing the location of the world's hot deserts. Now I'm going to show you a typical answer that would have been quite good for you to do in yours. Okay, so that is, most of the world's hot deserts are found between 20 degrees and 35 degrees north and south of the equator. Now you can see that just there, that's where they lie. But they rarely actually are on the equator. Okay. The climate is hot and dry because the Hadley cell has cold, dry air sinking above the deserts. This air warms as it sinks but remains dry, so there is obviously little no precipitation, which is another fancy word for rain. You will learn more about the Hadley cell in the hazards topic, so don't worry too much about that. So, little traffic light system that you will be familiar with. I do not know where hot deserts are located. I know where hot deserts are located, and I can explain why hot deserts are located where they are. Now, if you're not quite sure with those, you might want to go back on the video and have another go at that task. So I'm going to move on now to another task, which is on your worksheet. It's to describe climate conditions of a hot desert using a climate graph. Again, you should be familiar with these from when we did tropical rainforests. So use the key to help you. As you know, temperature is a constant, so it's in the line graph part of this, and then the rainfall is the bar chart part of this. Okay, so you're going to now work through the sheets. You might want to pause the video, looking at how much rain does it get, what are the temperature like, do you notice any patterns, but try and use some statistics to back up your answer, because that is a really good thing to do as a geographer. Now, if you want to challenge yourself, look at the tropical rainforest climate graph and compare and contrast the climates of both the biomes. So now pause the video and have a go at that task, please. Okay, so you've had a bit of time now to have a go at that, and we're just going to run you through some of the answers. So the driest months are generally June, July, August, September, as you can see here. Now the wettest months are January, and that's approximately 29 millimeters. And that's the wettest month compared to the rest. Now the lowest temperature recorded on here is actually in January with 12 degrees Celsius. Okay, so not as perhaps hot as you might have thought. So we can have extreme high temperatures, but it can have quite low temperatures throughout the night in a desert. And the highest temperature is in July and August. That's approximately about 37 degrees Celsius on this climate graph. And the pattern that you may have noticed is that the higher the temperature, the lower the amount of rainfall. Okay. Now, if you went on to be a fantastic superstar geographer and had a go at the challenge, then you might have picked up some of these. Now, there's significantly more rainfall in the tropical rainforest biome. Now, you'll be familiar with that from what we've studied. The rainfall in the tropical rainforest does follow a similar pattern, though, to the desert, as you may have noticed, with it being at its lowest between June to September. Okay, so it follows a similar pattern, as you may have seen here. It drops slightly and goes back up again, just like it does in the desert. Now, temperature is at its highest in October in the tropical rainforest, as you can see, compared to July and August in the desert. And then obviously the lowest temperatures in the tropical rainforest are February compared to January in the desert climates. So again, with the traffic light system, I can't understand climate graphs. I can use climate graphs to describe the climate of a place. I can use climate graphs to describe the climate of a place and can explain why the climate is as it is. So again, if you're not sure, go back. So we're going to now have a look at interdependence. So interdependence, what could it mean? What does dependent mean? I want you to have a go at using the pictures to try and help you to work out what actually could interdependence mean. Now pause the video, just give yourself a bit of time and then have a go at that task. Okay, so you've had a bit of time to think about what it could mean. Okay, now what interdependence actually means is that all parts of an ecosystem, that includes its climate, water, soils, animals, and even people, that depend or rely on one another. So if one changes, everything else is affected. So you're dependent on each other. For example, with this picture here with the stones, that top stone is dependent on all of the other or pebbles to help it keep up. So it's dependent on each other. And then that's just typical in an ecosystem or a biome. Things can be dependent on one another. So your task now is to decide whether the images are biotic or abiotic elements. Now we've looked at this before. So biotic is living elements and abiotic is non-living elements. So the first one, biotic or abiotic. So this answer was actually biotic, okay, because that is a living thing. This, abiotic, it is not living. Biotic, biotic, that is a living thing. Abiotic, the desert soil is abiotic. Abiotic, the sun is abiotic. Okay, so just had a quick flick through that. You should now, though, be aware that an ecosystem can be fragile and changes can cause a variety of impacts, because we looked at how changes can impact a small ecosystem with the example of a pond. So all aspects of an ecosystem, both the biotic and abiotic elements, are all closely related and many depend on each other. They are what we call interdependent, and we've looked at that and what that actually means. So, interdependence then. In deserts, for example, the hot and dry climate affects the soil. As you can see on the pictures, the soil is sandy, isn't it? Now, the soil in an area is therefore dependent on its weather and climate. So if you're looking at that, you can tell that it's very hot and dry. Soils in deserts are salty due to high evaporation rates and have relatively low nutrient because there is little decomposition of dead plant material by fungi and bacteria. So obviously, because there's little decomposition, there's obviously not going to be as much nutrients. Therefore, plants struggle to grow in these conditions, and of course many animals require a large amount of vegetation or plants to survive. So the desert can therefore only support a low density populations of animals and people. So what we mean by low density is really not a lot. Low density population, so you should be familiar with that from our urban issues and challenges topic that we did. So they've got low density populations of animals and people due to the sparse, which is also low, amount of vegetation. So just to sum up, basically then, animals rely on the plants. The plants then rely on the soil. And soils rely on nutrients from animals when they die or excrete. Okay, so all of the abiotic and biotic elements of a hot desert ecosystem are interdependent. Your task now on the sheet is you are going to investigate some of the ways in which interdependence happens in the hot desert ecosystem. So think about how do they rely on each other. Now I've gone through one with you and had a little bit of discussion, so hopefully you'll understand this okay. On task 2, you need to fill in the sheet using the information. So you're going to now pause the video and complete this sheet now. Okay, so you should now have completed that sheet. So based on what we have looked at, can you now make links between the tropical rainforest and the desert in relation to the interdependence of soils, plants and animals? Okay, so we've looked into a little bit about deserts and we've looked at how people can impact the interdependence. Okay, so what I'm going to show you is an example. So you're going to look at an example of interdependence in a desert, and then you're going to use the statements here about tropical rainforests to see whether you can decide whether they are a similarity or are they a difference between the tropical rainforest and the desert in terms of interdependence. So the example is, the living components that inhabit the hot desert are connected to each other and the physical environment. So they're connected to each other and the physical environment. For example, people are dependent on their animals for milk and food, as well as their use as pack animals. Humans are also dependent on water for their survival. So think about now then, these tropical rainforest interdependence, are they similarities or differences between the desert? So people in the tropical rainforest rely on plants and animals for food. There is a rapid decomposition of dead plant material in the tropical rainforest due to the wet and warm climate. Is that a link or not a link? So are they the same in the tropical rainforest and deserts, or are they very different? The dense vegetation provides lots of food, so animal populations are high, and plants pass on their nutrients to animals when eaten. Okay, so you might want to pause the video and have a think about then now. Are these similarities or differences in terms of interdependence between the two? Okay. So the top one said then, people in the tropical rainforest rely on plants and animals for food. And that is a similarity. Okay, just like the tropical rainforest and in the desert, people rely on it for plants and animals for food. Next one, there is a rapid decomposition of dead plant material in the tropical rainforest due to the wet and warm climate. Now that's a difference because there is not a lot of decomposition in the desert. Okay, you've got a lot of rapid decomposition in the tropical rainforest. It's wet, and you've got lots of fungi that decompose those nutrients and provide nutrients for the soil. Next one, the dense vegetation provides lots of food, so animal populations are high. Well, that's clearly a difference because there is not a dense vegetation in a desert, whereas in a tropical rainforest there's a lot of dense vegetation. And there's also not a massive amount of high populations of animals in deserts. And finally, plants pass on their nutrients to animals when eaten. Well, that's clearly a link that's a similarity because both have the pass of nutrients to animals. Although there's less of it in a desert, there still is the pass of nutrients to animals. Okay, your final task then on the sheet is to look at this example question. And it is explain how the abiotic and biotic elements of a hot desert ecosystem are interdependent. So, your task is to read through the model answer. If you're an OK geographer, you're going to look at what's good about the answer and highlight where the person has explained. If you're a good geographer, you're then going to look at what's good about the answer. What could be improved though? And finally, if you're a top geographer, have a go at actually improving the answer. So if this was a question that you were going to answer in a normal exam, don't forget you would always use the bug, okay? But have a read through and decide which geographer you are and have a go at that task and then hand that back in to your teacher when you're finished. Have a great week. Thanks, Year 9.